Can everybody hear me? Somebody put in chat that they can hear me okay. I just want to make sure it sounds good. If you don't mind, adjust my webcam angle a little bit here. Nice. So yeah, I do not get these programs. So, you had to set up the stream and stuff beforehand and you program all the stuff in. So I start the stream and all of a sudden it asks me to log into Google or my Google account, and I'm already have the stream selected, and so that's why I took a few loops of that beautiful video. So let me search for my magic pen that controls my electronic brain. I hope everyone is doing wonderfully today. I've asked wanting to do things on YouTube Live, and through Zoom on my website. Um, I like Zoom because I like to see people's faces, especially if we're going to discuss something like whether it's one of the readings or some of the other stuff I'm going to be creating. Now that I have a friend who has literally just in 2 days went on to the back end of my website and corrected some errors, which freed up time for me to film some awesome video for some of my upcoming classes that fall under the pay what you will model. And it's just priceless. I for the this past like 10 days are the first, well, most of them at least, um have been the first time I've woken up in over 3.5 years, like excited and happy and stoked and ready to take on the day. Um, and I feel like things are lining up. And yeah, I just, I have a few questions I need answers to about things, and priceless. That's why one of the reasons why I went with the pay what you will program is because all of our time is priceless. We only have so much of it, and I I don't consider what I do work. It's just my life. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I am working on something to do with teaching, whether it's how to teach something different or better, or just, and also while trying to make myself better. um, Sorry, I'm just trying to look through the camera settings here to adjust a few things. All right, that's done. Pop back up here. So yeah, I while I what is up with that? Am I really small all of a sudden to you guys? Hopefully it'll fix itself. Let me know if I'm really small and I can fix it. But anyway, yeah, they, even though if, and it's funny how life works out, and of course, this is about, so I am tiny or I am big. Um, I've been thinking a lot about choices and quarter screen. All right. Well, I'm gonna fix that real quick, guys. I'm just gonna go back to the logo for 1 second. All right, and we're back and full size now. I hope. Um, so I think a lot about choice and how seemingly at the time insignificant choices can further down the line lead to a dramatic alteration, of your life's path. And the same is true with the questions that we ask. I am a fan of words. I have a friend, Leah, who booked me for a private class, geez, in 2011. And her partner had a double PhD in what's the study of word entomology, the study of words and their root causes. And it's funny how, certain words like question, we break that down, quest, right? So a question is a spoken adventure. Think of it that way. Um, and putting the quest back in our questions is really ties back to awareness because and I am super guilty of this. And my former partner used to just get so pissed off at me because I would ask a question knowing knowing the answer, or at least like in, let's say I needed to know where the olive oil was. The olive oil is always in this general vicinity. So wasting the breath to even ask when I could just go look is, is pointless and a waste of energy. So one thing I found in work, so I'm currently finishing up a 6 or 8 part bone tools class with a group of students from Germany. And, when I run webinar series, like I'm getting ready to start here soon, um, there's a lot of in between, back and forth in between sessions between students and between me and students. And with my European students, they use far less words to communicate than we do. So, I'll send out an email and asking questions and things and just get no response or just like a one word response. And I just find it interesting. And, I find it fascinating. My friend who is a true definition of a caretaker as who is housing me and feeding me. He speaks 5 different languages, and I just find that so fascinating. That's why if the word boredom, if the word boredom exists in your life, you're doing it wrong. Because if you really make every moment of your life a quest for something, um, we can glean that much more from it. That's why that the teaching of what we call the sacred question, that being what happened here, what is this teaching me, um, is something that we can use to uh, you know ask about anything. And it's when I approach a situation, whether it's a series of animal tracks that where it wasn't just the animal moving at a normal cadence, it stopped and did something. So really quickly I look at that cluster of tracks and I kind of go through my mind palace based on all of the tracking I've done throughout my whole life and what I know about animal behavior. And you know I'll ask more questions, and then sometimes you'll get an answer. Uh, Sometimes you won't. And then sometimes the best ones, you will get the answer years later or decades later. Since this last year, I have gone through more growth um, by putting the quest back in my questions about everything because I've had to call everything into question in my life in this last year. Things that I once believed in, like I would gravity or that the earth is round. I mean flat. Um, I've had truth shattered, which has caused me to quest even further. Sorry, I'm trying to plug my mouse in. It's about to die. Um, so I find that interesting as well. One thing I've loved is, and if you are not signed up for this event, the Friday night event where on Zoom I read from my dad's books. Uh, I've read my dad's books numerous times over my life, and every stage of life that I read them in, I learn something new. And a lot of the biggest lessons between my father and I were unspoken because think if you think of us before we had verbal communication, hand me that cup of coffee. Can I borrow your axe? Um, we had to project ideas to our fellow, whatever evolution we were at the time. We had to, through, body language or whatever, convey something to them. And I've really been forced, like I said, this past year, I've been forced to question everything, from have I literally wasted 46 years of my life minus, a brief, break of craziness in my teenage and early 20s? Have I dedicated my life to nothing, to something that's not, going to work? And then, finding out some things and just hurting on a certain level, and but dealing with it because I have taken the time to always, putting the quest back in all my questions. Every day I quest to be better than I was the day before. I have a rule that no matter what, I have to learn at least one new thing a day. Sometimes that might be as simple as pulling up Wikipedia at like midnight and reading a random article. Um, but I think if we were put on this planet for, the things I think we were put on this planet for were to become better versions of our parents, uh, to constantly be learning and growing. And, we're especially meant to learn from the past and not repeat the bad things. I mean, it's still, one of the, in my digital brain here, I have, like 1,000 books or something. Aurelius Meditations. So for those who aren't familiar, Marcus Aurelius was the Roman emperor, and the this was his personal journal that got, taken and printed. And other than there being some weird stuff about stable boys and things like that, and here's this guy 2,500 years ago who is questioning why we do things like why do we still kill each other over things, over resources when we could just come up with agreements and share them. It's and it bleeds over into the outdoor education world. I've been questioning lately, why, other than not having, that we've moved into what I call a pay to play world. If you have capital, if you have money, I know a guy right now who I could give money to, and within a month there would be a featured article about me in Outside Magazine or something like that. And it's so much more difficult for people like me. Luckily, I'm very proud of my daddy's name. Um, that gives me a little bit of street cred. But yeah, it's if you've got the ability to pay, you get to play. And that whole idea of perceived value, that just because something costs more, that it ultimately means it's better, right? That's why. Yeah, it's fascinating to watch humans. I'm often, as an outdoorsman, I'm often in outdoor stores, and you see those Yeti coolers that are like $400, and then there's some other brand right next to it that's made in the exact same factory with the exact same materials, and it's half the price, but the people still buy the one that's twice as much. And don't get me wrong, I have no problem with spending money on outdoor gear that I'm going to stake my life on, like my wool clothing, or knives. But you know, you're not getting anything extra. You're just getting the brand name itis. But yeah, so I've been questioning a lot lately about what is, well, I know what my vision is. I know what my path is. I know what was requested of me by my father and of Stalking Wolf. And, I know what the unseen and eternal um, wants of me, and that is to be one of many story keepers, uh, but specifically, a story keeper of a not only my father's pure vision that gave birth to the tracker school, but how my life experience mixed in with it has created something new. And if you watch the video I made about it was the those of you who knew my father knows he wasn't very much of a conversationalist. Um, you get him up in front of a room of 1,000 people, and he's one of the best public speakers there ever was, in my personal opinion. Um, yeah, the longest conversation I ever had with him was that night when we decided I was going to leave. And I remember him being really sad, and it was right at the start of the internet boom, when smartphone people started to get smartphones. And at the same time, there was this really real dramatic shift at tracker school where uh, people stopped wanting to work on the physical skills as much, and they wanted to, do more of the philosophy skills. And I remember my dad just pacing outside smoking. God, I wish he could quit that stuff. And he'd just be like, they don't understand that, in this lineage that the skills are critical. They're part and parcel with each other. Like, in order to get the whole picture, you have to uh, learn how to do things like establish a connection with the materials you're working with, and to truly awaken, what is called like the pure mind, right? I read from Awakening Spirits last night. It talks about the pure mind. When I pick up my fire kit bag here. So this fire kit bag was made for me by my good friend Lizzie, who lived in New Zealand for 2 years and studied under a master felter. And so, it made this bag, and, this bow was given to me by Bill McConnell on top of Prayer Hill in the Pine Barrens, which I'm pretty sure got burned, sadly enough. But, you know, there's another example, you know, a set of books that guides a lot of what I do, are the Dune series by Frank Hebert. And there's a line in the book that says, right and wrong don't belong in nature. Those are human institutions. So, like it or not, the Pine Barrens is meant to burn every so often. And, in fact, the pitch pine trees, their cones won't open and drop the seeds unless they're lit. And, when I left there in 2009, the primitive camp was like about 10 years overdue for a burning. And, but anyway, you know, I, you can't, see if I can explain this. Trying to work on this concept of oneness, of always questing, and then we often associate quest with the vision quest. And, no matter what peoples, no matter what part of the world, there was usually some sort of ritual that involved, going off by yourself for a few days. Some of it, was meant to be alone, or, you stay in one spot. There were certain indigenous peoples in the States where, they would do a pit quest inside a pit. Um, Me personally, and keeping that in mind, in the lineage that I am from, Vision Quest is 4 days and 4 nights. However, when you learn on working on, establishing that state of oneness, not only with the physical world, but the world of the force, and then, the world of the spirit, you realize that, what I hold in my hands isn't just, a pretty shaped piece of wood. This is one, two, with this bow. And, that's one of the things I tell my students, because nowadays, when I initially started, what was called Future Nature, I was essentially thinking I was going to be teaching 10 to 15, students in person every weekend. That has since dramatically changed. Um, Much of it for reasons, outside of my control, but I've moved more into the online teaching space and being someone who is always trying to push the edge, uh, you know, I'm going to be able to, instead of just having this sort of online class interaction where I teach and you listen, I'm going to have the ability to have like a webcam that follows me around and you'll be able to hear me. So we'll be able to do everything from track to be in the woods. And, part of each session of a class will have to be on the computer for obvious reasons. But just to have that ability is really awesome, and I'm really looking forward to it because the other reason why I chose to go, and back, sorry, I digress. My father would say, when you learn how to, truly, achieve that state of oneness, you can have a vision quest in 5 minutes, or 5 hours, or you could sit out for 20 days and not do anything but count ants. If there's one thing I've learned, I've had since last May, I've had some of the most powerful, like out of body experiences I've ever had in my life. Um, One of them happened about an hour northeast of here where I used to live, and one happened in Alaska on June 3rd, or no, June 7th at 3:45 a.m. when I was reborn. When I got my naked butt in a creek at 3:45 a.m. and it was full daylight, and yeah, it was quite the experience. But I've learned to approach every moment of my life with that empty cup space, or from the space of the empty cup, to where, if my cup is full, I can't add any more to it. If my question cup is full, I can't question anything. But if it's empty, I can add to it. And when you learn the skill on how to um, take lemons and make lemonade, if that makes sense. Learn from your uh, learn from your mistakes and sorry, weird. Um, yeah, you can a quest and a vision especially can and will happen at any time. In fact, the most powerful vision that I've ever had happened in the middle of a cow pasture in May of last year. It was hot, and I was picking apart a smelly, rotting cow. Or I just got done doing that, and then I set about walking around this pond to take some photos when I had this vision to where I literally was, at this pond, this beautiful pond, at 7:45 p.m. Right at the start of the golden hour, and then all of a sudden I was in pitch black, and then all of a sudden next to me was standing an elder from tracker school named Ralph Little Turtle, passed on quite a few years ago, and yeah, I've had a few of those since then, and so I find that as I move throughout my day, I am constantly asking, I'm constantly questing, why is this interaction I'm having going this way as opposed to that way? What can I do to make my next interaction better or the outcome better. Uh, we all have our quirks and our pet peeves and things like that, and it can be difficult to learn how to alter behaviors, especially that it irritate others. um, but yeah, I've I also talked a little bit earlier about choices and how seemingly at the time, what seemed like a insignificant choice, like the time I didn't buy that $1,000 worth of Bitcoin at 80 cents a piece. Um, um, could have, long reaching consequences. So, these days I operate by a few different principles. And that is number one, I always try to think, you know, if I make choice A or choice B, I try to envision as many possible and probable futures as there is. And then um, I will, then see what information, resources, whatever I have available to me. And if I'm dealing with a person and trying to help a person work through something or quest through something, even if I think what they're going through or what they're feeling is complete BS, I genuinely try to envision and truly feel what it is like to be them at that moment in space and time. Sorry. Um, yeah, I truly, because, even if someone comes to you with a problem and you're like, what is this person whining about for? You know, how dare you judge how they're feeling? Because to them it's very real. So when you approach life from that way, you start to notice that you also learn the ability to look at the world through different perspectives and different viewpoints. Um, it's almost like a Rolodex. I imagine it. So I have a very, I talk about Sherlock Holmes often, and I talk about my mind palace. So, I have this role at this thing. And a lot of these things we know we work on through envisioning, right? Because when we envision something, we manifest it because thought has power. So I imagine my like choice Rolodex. It's like spin the wheel and see where it lands. But yeah, I genuinely try to, before I pass judgment or um, make a decision, I genuinely try to feel what that person's feeling. Or if I'm gonna caretake a spot of land, I genuinely ask the land what it wants to become. If I'm about to, you know, pick up a piece of wood to work on to carve into something, instead of saying, I'm going to make a spindle in this part, I ask the piece of wood where it wants the spindle to be made from. And you'll have much better results. But the problem is, we have to learn all those wonderful skills that we spend our whole lives cultivating on um, uh, quieting the physical mind. Can be the hard one. Yeah, quieting the physical mind can be difficult. Is the stream coming through okay, or is it? Yeah, hold on a second. Let me see if I can lower the quality real quick. We just switched internets to my Starlink, uh, and I have not found the kind of optimal placement for it yet. So Let's see here. Where is it? I might be locked into this um, frame rate, or not frame rate. 1 second. Actually, I might be able to fix it. Sorry. I got high buffering. It's a quality, but whatever. Is it working okay now? Yes, no. All right. Anyway, what time is it? 4:38. God, I need new glasses. I've gotten. So I mentioned a while back I got snow blindness from a photography gig I did, um, and not only talk about learning how I learned rule number one of business: always sign a contract. Um, I took on this photography project for this woman, and I I didn't realize by being up late at night staring at a giant computer monitor, editing light box photos, that it can give you snow blindness. And I've been on the computer so much the last couple of weeks that um, for an hour after I wake up, I have to, like, it takes my eyes a while to adjust. So that's when I know I need to take a break. But now I need to take a break less than ever because I can finally fully work. I just wish I had my pen for my little book, but it's all good. Yeah, so anyway, so like I said, if you move about your day and no matter how I'm feeling, whether I'm feeling crappy, happy, mad, sad, every time I go out into the public, I try to embody what I want, what my perception of a good, decent human being is. That is someone who is, I don't judge books by their covers. Um, I use my, I'm so thankful that from a very young age I was told, I never had well, I did have a chance, but basically I was born into a place of awareness as opposed to having to go through part of my life realizing that, like, holy crap, I wasn't um, aware. And now I am. And wow, look at all this new stuff. Um, and I often say one of the hardest things for me when it came to learning or to teaching these skills is I learned them so much different than those of you that came and took a class at Tracker or anywhere else where sit your butt in one of them hard benches and listen to me or whoever lecture at you for an hour and then go do it. I learned by imitation of my elders, and also always being treated um, as a member of the group. I wasn't, because of my age, they didn't treat me like I was, 5 and 7 years old or, whatever. They treated me like I belonged there. In fact, like I was even teaching, groups of students. This is oh, sorry for the glare, but this is the first time my dad gave me like 60 people to take out and do a sign tracking lecture and workshop with. Um, and I remember being so excited. Whoa, that just made me lose my train of thought. But yeah, no, I mean, no matter how I'm feeling, I go out through the day. I'm using my awareness. He's Andy. Um, to go about my day and do the things I need to do, but also always on the lookout for ways I can be a caretaker. And, whether it's holding, one of my biggest pet peeves on earth is not people who don't hold the door for other people. Like that drives me to and I don't know if it's just here in Portland, but if you smile at people here, they look at you like you spit on them, which I don't understand. But yeah, and I go out and I do these things because I was trained to always leave every place, space, and person better than when I first encountered them. Um, so it's just something I've always done. And what's gotten me or given me joy but also sadness at the same time is like in the last 6 months I've had 5 people say the exact same thing to me after helping them do everything, anything from carry a box to I forget what the other ones were, but afterwards they say thank you. I didn't think people like you existed in the world anymore. And while of course that makes me feel good, it makes me sad. Just like when I stop at Safeway and I look up and I see this beautiful red-tailed hawk soaring, and then I look down and I realize that I'm the only one that's noticed that beautiful bird. And so yeah, if you ever need question, why I do the work I do, why I will do so until I'm living out of plastic bags under a bridge if I have to, and wear a sandwich board that tells people the end is coming and to use wide angle vision. Um, let me see. Nice. Yeah, there's this woman. So around here we have three rivers. We have the Sandy River, which is, I believe, the shortest wreck world on Earth. It has the steepest elevation difference of any river on Earth. And then we have the Clackamas River, and then we have the Willamette, and these were rivers that historically were some of the largest salmon and steelhead runs ever. You read the early explorers, journals, and I said you could walk across the fish's back and never touch, get your feet wet. And as somebody who's been fly fishing since I was 7, um, I so always dreamed of living in salmon and steelhead country. And I got out here and I got the proper gear. And then I realized that 0.05% of salmon and steelhead head back out to the ocean, go all the way to Japan, come all the way back. And that's why they're one of the toughest fighting fish, because they have to like spend their whole lives being chased by everything from uh, you know smallmouth bass to great white sharks to whatever. And um yeah, it's like I think I forget the local dam on the Sandy, like something like 14 wild fish returned this year. And it just makes me so sad, and why it's so important that when we are caretaking or when we are asking the questions, we think, the questions that are ultimately going to lead to us, or us giving us the advice to somebody else to make a choice. Um, we need to think about the ramifications of what our advice or what choice we make may have into the future. Because I could see how if you came here back in the day, and everybody's heard of Lewis and Clark. What people don't realize is that there were indigenous peoples from this region who had already gone and spent time in the court of the King of France and come back. Um, So yeah, sorry about the buffering, gang. I have to better position the Starlink dish. I'm trying to find I was trying to find a setting, but um in a minute anyway. But yeah, so no matter how I'm feeling, things like pick up trash and I stop and I look at flowers and I try to be uh sometime, especially when you're like I've been since I moved out of my house that I was living in September, like literally just going somewhere and vomiting my things all over someone's house. That's why I really want a van, a four-wheel drive van that I can have my own self-contained bubble where I've got my broadcast station and I've got my storage for my skill stuff and this and that, and when I go visit people, I can go in with my backpack and that's it. Um, so one day we're getting there. But yeah, so I go out. I just, I just simply using your ears and wide angle vision. That's why this class, that's part of my Pay What You Will series, is going to be important because I'm going to give you the some of the physical tools to work on what I call the diamond of oneness, and that is wide angle vision, tracking, awareness, and natural movement. And if you work on the things that I present to you throughout that 4 session online class, you will, it's a self-learning type thing. It's like I'm installing software into you that just automatically updates like your apps do if you work on it. That's the only problem, right? uh, if you have to, yeah, you have to do the homework. And um, yeah, and I think that's a big reason why the drop off from people wanting to learn skills to the more philosophy based stuff right around the age of the internet boom is because um, it made people want to go outside less, or I don't understand it. So I'm going to do what I've always done and live by the saying, only dead fish go with the flow. And I'm going to use their own technology to lead as many people as I can back to nature. So, but yeah. So your goal is your homework, a homework assignment I'm going to give you that you should do every day is I want you to do, if you can, do something nice for somebody without them even knowing it. Because one night when I was hitchhiking through Emma and I saw the three most obscure billboards ever. The first one, two church and one liquor store. One was forbidden fruit creates many jams. The second one was people see your deeds, God sees your motives. And the third one was the liquor store one, was a bottle of Southern Comfort, and it had a horrible saying on it about being a liquid undergarment removal. Yeah, this was in the 90s when things like that were still acceptable. But just the juxtaposition of these three things together. But that statement is very true. Remember, we're meant to do things from a place of selflessness. Um, giving without, I don't do the things I do to, um, what's whatever, and influence people. I do them because I want to see the world and the spaces around me be as best as they can. and whatever I can do with the information, tools, and resources I have available to me, that's what I'm going to do. That's why I would make a horrible rich person, because I would most likely give most of it away to, you know, with projects and things like that. Um, because I literally, my, my digital notebook is so full of so many fantastic things. I just need to find the right people to um oh, is that, am I still on? Well, let me see. Oh, oh, I was going to stop in a minute anyway. Um but yeah, should, oh, okay. But yeah, it's just like I said, within reason, I try to basically leave a trail of fairy dust and rainbows behind me wherever I go. And, um, but, just like, not every plant will grow in every zone, you have to have the awareness to know how to be most effective, and that comes through your self work and, exploring yourself and dealing with the things that hold you back from being your ideal self. And it took me a couple of years, before I learned that first lesson back last May, that one of the things that was holding me back, and was still until recently to some extent. But with that, y'all, it is getting to be about that time, so I'm gonna say bye bye now. But if you missed part of it, it will be in the recording on up on YouTube. A couple other things I wanted to mention. So I apologize if you've gotten like crazy amounts of emails saying classes have been moved and shifted around and things like that. I've tried to turn as many reminders off as I can as we simplify things and fix things. So thank you for being patient with that. My goal is to, once these classes get started, I'll add a new class, as one ends. I'll add another class. Certain classes, I'll run, perpetually. Others will only run every so often. Some will be part twos after I have had a few people do the part ones, and a lot of it is going to be free form stuff. And I'm, hoping that I can make as much of it, uh, available to everybody. Um, One of the things I am going to be doing soon is, originally I designed my new website to where you had to create a login to make it easier for you to sign up for classes. I am going to split my website in two. There's going to be a membership section, it's free. But in the membership section is where you'll find like tools I recommend, organizations I know to be top notch, tools I know to be the best of the best, um, testimonials, things like that. And then eventually I plan on creating a naturalist style wiki, kind of like iNaturalist, but a little more geared towards, you know, ancient skills and, the awareness and things like that. So yeah, I got lots of plans. I just am lacking the other one full-time employee and one part-time employee a company like mine should have. And I'm also lacking, the other important things you need, like money and stuff like that. But it's I finally feel like I'm on the right track, and like I said, I had to learn a few very painful lessons. Um, and I just want to get to a point where I can like truly rest because I go to bed working and I wake up, and other than my hour I give myself in the morning, I just go, 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 go. And I can't just like chill out for a half hour and do nothing. And not because I don't want to, because like physically I'm so far behind after everything that's happened. Like I estimate my business is 8 months behind where it should be. So that's why I'm trying to crank out as much content as I can. And so, yeah, I'm looking for everything from investors to people who want to help in a myriad of ways. Um, yeah, so you can always access me through my website, trackolytes.com. And if you're interested, so my open to the public classes, those are pay what you will. However, my private online classes and in person classes will still have a sliding scale associated with them. But I don't want to keep anybody out if I, don't have to, because these skills belong to all of us. And, you know, it's it's teaching is one of the few things I have that allows me to truly be in the now. And to me that's priceless, because I used to have so many different tools I could use to be in the moment, even just a simple walk in the woods. And now even that, I just got into using my camera again for filming stuff other than videos for classes and things the other day. And I was like, wow, I forgot how fun this is. So thank you all to those of you who have been keeping me in your thoughts as I slowly grow into T3 business human naturalist extraordinaire and crazy pirate. Um, yeah, until then, as usual. Oh yeah, a couple things. So if you're on Facebook, I recently started my own online community where I can control the narrative, because unless you read it on the front page of my website or on this page, my Facebook group page, um, unless it's good, it's probably fake news. So my front page of my website is meant to act as like I update it daily with a video. I make a video every day, even if it's just short. And then the Facebook group is for people to hang out and do the Facebook group thing. And I'm putting that up now. Trackolytes. And yeah, I'm looking at all sorts of different models. I've been looking at Patreon a little bit. Um, so I'm not 100% sure, but the only thing I know is I was given a sacred task, from stalking wolf to my father to me, like, no, from stalking wolf for me, you know, um, that I'm trying to make happen here. And being that I'm being actively, oh, must be a little bit before sunset. Being finding out that I'm actively being silenced by, you know, uh, Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. It's not even worth it. I only want to be around positive people who want to see every member of their community reach as high as they can and be the best they can be. You know, if you don't energize, if your presence doesn't energize me in some way, then there's no place for you in my life. Um, I can help you become that person if you like. But yeah, no, Nate, it's, you know, it's so sad to see some of the stuff, some of the stuff that's been done to me, that's been done to other people. Um, it's just sad. And, to think that my father wouldn't prepare me for these times. Um, my dad better than that. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go because I got lots of garage cleaning to do. Peace, love, joy, purpose to you all. I am going to be looking at setting up a second kind of weekly, you know, event like this. So stay tuned for more news about that. But yeah, until then, stay happy, stay healthy, be human, and just be a good person. That's all I ask. Just be a good person.